When we think about the Roman Catholic Church and science, typically what comes to mind is some sort of major conflict, the most obvious one being Galileo and the whole issue of heliocentrism versus geocentrism. But today, we're going to take a look at the Roman Catholic's response to the theory of evolution. And what we find may actually surprise us. So let's talk about it today on the Science and Faith podcast. After the publication of Charles Darwin's book on the origin of species, the world it sort of began to immediately analyze it. It was an immediate success, the book, because of how there was finally in place a mechanism by which evolution could work through natural selection. And so there were a lot of people, both in the scientific and the theological community, that were very interested in Darwin's ideas. So, of course, as you would expect, the theologians set about looking at Darwin's idea and seeing if there were any theological implications from it, and of course there were. But perhaps what most people don't realize is that immediately after Darwin's publication of On the Origin of Species, other people started making very taking very conflated positions on the idea of the theory of evolution and as a scientific theory and also as a materialistic philosophy. And so guys like Thomas Huxley and other noted atheists started immediately using Darwin's theory of evolution as a way to promote atheism. They saw it as scientific grounds for rejecting God and for explaining life and explaining, basically having a worldview that could exclude God. At the same time, there were other theologians that were looking at Darwin's work, and they were responding both to this atheistic conflation, but they were also somewhat misreading what Darwin was saying, and they were kind of assigning some motives to Darwin that Darwin never had. And they were saying that, yes, the theory of evolution is a dangerous idea, and there's cause for concern here. But in terms, if we take a step back and look at the broader response of the Catholic Church and theologians in general, what we find is that most theologians across denominational spectrum is that they said, hey, as long as we keep evolution as a scientific theory and just leave it in the realm of science as terms of explaining how something in nature works, there's nothing here to be concerned about in terms of the theological implications. It's when we start to conflate and add this kind of philosophical scientism to it that we try to use the theory of evolution to explain things that normally theology would try to explain, such as the existence of God or the creation of Adam and Eve and human beings. Then that's when we get into trouble. And so initially, within the first 10, 20 years of the publication of Darwin's book, there were at least 5 major responses written by the Catholic Church to Darwin's book and his theory on evolution. And eventually, all 5 of those, which were all basically in favor of evolution, saying the theory of evolution as a scientific theory does not conflict with the church dogma, it does not conflict with our theology. There's nothing here to be concerned about. This can be very easily compatibilized with the Roman Catholic dogma. What happened after those publications is internally, the Roman Catholic Church started putting pressure on the people, on the authors of those papers and those books to recant, because there was this growing concern that the theory of evolution was going to somehow pose a threat not to the Bible, not to necessarily all of church dogma, but specifically the main concern was over how the theory of evolution was going to interact with anthropology, the church's positions on the doctrine of man, that mankind was created in the image of God as a special, unique act of creation. And so internally there was a lot of pressure, and eventually all 5 of those books and articles and papers that were written were either recanted or they were put on a list where the Catholic Church said this is not an approved official Catholic Church book or writing that we recommend to read. And so eventually those books were either unpublished or they were recanted by the authors. The most significant thing that to come of this, though, if we were to just end the story there, we could say, aha, there we go, Galileo all over again. But that's not really what's happening. As always, there's more to the story. So in 1860, there was a council in Cologne. The Bishop of Cologne got permission from the Pope to hold a special council. And this would be Pope Pius IX. And the Bishop of Cologne got permission, the authorization from Pope Pius IX, to hold a special council to take up this question about the compatibility of evolution and the Roman Catholic Church dogma. And this is what that council concluded when they one of the decrees that came out of that council. The first parents were created directly by God. Therefore, we declare as contrary to sacred scripture and to the faith, the opinion of those who are not ashamed to assert that man, insofar as his body is concerned, came to be by spontaneous change from imperfect nature to the most perfect, and in continuous process finally became human. Now, it's important here to understand what that's saying. If that seems just like a lot of jarble and it's unclear, let me basically summarize it for you. What the Council of Cologne basically decided in one of their decrees was that if you are talking about the creation of Adam and Eve as it relates to the theory of evolution, and you exclude divine action within the evolutionary process that gave birth to Adam, that is not permissible to be believed by good, faithful Catholics. That contradicts Roman Catholic Church dogma. But if you believe that over millions of years, Adam and Eve were the common ancestor to, or rather the descendant to, some common ancestor, and through the process of evolution, they evolved slowly over millions of years, and eventually Adam and Eve, through this descent with modification, were created, and that God was guiding and directing that action, then that's a fully compatible belief with Roman Catholic Church dogma. And that's essentially what the Council of Cologne concluded. The main issue for the theory of evolution with Roman Catholic Church dogma was the exclusion of divine action. So it wasn't so much important to believe how Adam and Eve were created, how this divine image was given to Adam and Eve. Rather, the most important thing for the Council of Cologne in 1860 was the inclusion or exclusion of divine action in that creation. And so that was what the council really nailed down as the main issue. And then later on, Pope Pius XII in the 1950 encyclical Humani Generis, he stated the following: "Some imprudently and indiscreetly hold that evolution, which has not been fully proven, even in the domain of the natural sciences, explains the origin of all things, and audaciously support the monistic and pantheistic opinion that the world is in continual evolution. Communists gladly subscribe to this opinion so that when the souls of men have been deprived of every idea of a personal God, they may the more efficaciously defend and propagate their dialectical materialism. Such fictitious tenets of evolution, which repudiate all that is absolute, firm, and immutable, have paved the way for the new erroneous philosophy which, rivaling idealism, immanentism, and pragmatism, has assumed the name of existentialism, since it concerns itself only with the existence of individual things and neglects all consideration of their immutable essences." So in the estimation of Pope Pius XII, again, let's kind of summarize what the Pope in 1950 was saying in his encyclical. The crucial issue facing Christianity, particularly Roman Catholic faith, when interpreting evolution, is to not neglect the essential Roman Catholic Church dogma. So for him, it's not that evolution itself, or the theory of evolution, or the natural science of evolution is the problem. It's the use of evolution by communists and existentialists and atheists to kind of promote this materialistic philosophy, to use evolution as a philosophy to tell people there is no God, all that exists is material, the material physical world, there is no spiritual world or supernatural. For Pope Pius XII in 1950, that stance is incompatible with Roman Catholic Church dogma, not the theory of evolution as a scientific theory. And so that's really, really important to distinguish between those two things. The Catholic Church historically has not had a problem with the science of evolution. It has a problem with the philosophical naturalism, with the materialistic philosophy, the scientism that comes with conflating the scientific theory of evolution with the philosophical idea that we can use evolution as a worldview to understand the world and make sense of the world around us. That the Catholic Church has always maintained from the beginning, from the publication of Darwin's book on the origin of species, is incompatible with Roman Catholic Church doctrine, not the theory of evolution as a scientific theory itself. So that's a very important distinction to maintain. And of course, what we have later is Pope John Paul II's address to the Pontifical Academy of the Sciences, where he essentially reiterates more of the same. And I'll just quote real quickly what he says here. He says, "Today, almost half a century after the publication of the encyclical," that was Pope Pius XII's encyclical, "fresh knowledge has led to the recognition that evolution is more than a hypothesis. It is indeed remarkable that this theory has been progressively accepted by researchers following a series of discoveries in various fields of knowledge. However, theories of evolution which, in accordance with the philosophies inspiring them, consider the mind as emerging from the forces of living matter or as a mere epiphenomenon of this matter, are incompatible with the truth about man, nor are they able to ground the dignity of the person." So again, we have later on in 1996, when Pope John Paul II addresses the Pontifical Academy of the Sciences, he reiterates and clarifies over 100 years of Catholic Church teaching and interpretation of the theory of evolution. It's the philosophical aspects that people conflate with philosophers, scientists, sometimes theologians, conflate with the scientific aspect of the theory of evolution. That's the problem for the Roman Catholic Church. If you want to believe in evolution as a scientific theory that develops and unfolds by natural selection over millions of years and gives rise to new organisms, there's nothing in the Catholic Church's mind, there's nothing wrong with a good, faithful Catholic believing that. If you exclude divine action from that process, or you conflate that scientific theory with a philosophical materialism that says that that's all there is and this is the best explanation for life, that part is incompatible with the Roman Catholic faith. And so that hopefully gives some clarity to the question of how has the Catholic Church responded to the theory of evolution. Historically speaking, the Catholic Church's issues with the theory of evolution have been the philosophical responses, not the scientific theory itself. It's okay for a good, faithful Roman Catholic to embrace evolutionary theory. The historical position of the Church from the publication of Darwin's book has always been the acceptance of the scientific theory and the rejection of the philosophical naturalism or the exclusion of God as the guider and mover within the process of evolution. So that's our episode for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you on a future episode. As we're going to, over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at a couple of other denominational responses to the theory of evolution. So we're looking forward to that. If you guys have a question or you have some comments, maybe there's some Catholics out there watching this video who have some comments you want to add, feel free to leave the comments in the comment section down below, or send us an email. Our email address is scienceandfaithdortmund@gmail.com. I get those emails myself personally, so you can send them directly to me, and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly and as thoroughly as I can. You can also check out our website if you want to look at more resources. There's articles, book recommendations that we give. Our website address is scienceandfaith.de. So thanks so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Science and Faith Podcast.